Welcome to First. I'm Mark Eichman along with Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min. Delaware Vietnam veterans are part of a major expansion to the wall that serves as a memorial in Washington. A look at how a new education project will come together on this week's program.
On the very first edition of First, Senator Tom Carper was discussing health care. 8 years later, almost to the day, we talked to him again about the very same topic.
Artist Rick Phillips continues to create the type of art that comes naturally to him. Next weekend, he'll join other artists at the Brandywine Arts Festival. First, your public media news magazine starts now.
I am getting a little bit antsy because, first of all, we're losing light. Second of all, we are now outside of artillery range. We got to get out of there.
We have to move out of here because they're coming. And we don't have time.
I went to the Major Nyaw, his name was, and I said, Major, we have got to get out of here now. And Nyaw said, don't you forget, I am a major and you are a lieutenant. Turned on his heel and walked away. 10 minutes later, all hell broke loose.
That is a scene from the upcoming 10-part, 18-hour documentary on the Vietnam War. The Ken Burns-helmed series starts September 17th on WHYY-TV. It's sure to start a conversation that has never stopped when it comes to the war. Part of the conversation also has to do with helping people understand the Vietnam War. Our first look begins in Washington, D.C., where Delaware vets are part of a new education center planned at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. 58,000 names are etched in this polished black granite wall. Names like Gary Dempsey, James Glover, Thomas Adams, Richard Bowman. Since 1982, this simplistic memorial to Vietnam veterans who lost their life on the other side of the world is visited by some 3 million people every year. As those visitors descend below ground level along the path of the wall, the effect is a sobering experience.
First and foremost, you have to understand that this is not a memorial to the Vietnam War. This is a memorial to the Vietnam veterans. It's never been political, it's never been military. It's about those who answered the call to service and made the ultimate sacrifice to their country.
Jim Knotts leads the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, the group that raised money to build the wall 35 years ago.
The question that I hear all the time about Vietnam is, well, what's next? What's next for the wall? What's next for our Vietnam veterans?
The answer is an education center to be built across the street from the wall near the Lincoln Memorial.
That's where people will really get a better idea of what it means to have 58,000 names on the wall, 58,000 lives cut short, families forever affected. We're going to have educational presentations so you can understand things like, why did our country decide to send troops to Vietnam? What were their motivations for going? What were their motivations for staying? And then eventually, what were their motivations for leaving? What were we trying to accomplish, and why was it necessary for 58,000 Americans to serve and to give their lives?
It's also a way to show more respect to those returning soldiers who weren't treated well when coming back from Vietnam. These days, returning troops are celebrated at ceremonies like this one recently in Smyrna, honoring Delaware Army National Guard members returning after supporting the fight against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. U.S. Senator from Delaware Tom Carper, who served 3 tours as a Navy flight officer in Vietnam, was part of the Welcome Home Committee.
When my squadron came back to California, I can assure you the governor wasn't there, U.S. senators were not there, congressmen, attorney general. We were happy to be home, but I'm not so sure everybody else was.
He's looking forward to seeing how the Education Center will continue to tell the story of the Vietnam veterans he served with.
I think that memorial is just incredibly beautiful and moving, and it does tell the story that a lot of people served over there, and a lot of people laid down their lives. I think the idea of having better telling the story would be terrific. I'd love to see that done.
One way the story will be told is through pictures. The Memorial Fund Group is collecting photos of every veteran who's listed on the wall, all 58,000.
You really get a sense that this was a complete life. This was a person with hopes and dreams, with family, with friends, with buddies. They were high school athletes, they were college leaders. They really run the gamut of our society in every facet.
They've collected more than 50,000 photos so far.
We've made great progress. Delaware, actually, we received the last photo for those from Delaware earlier in 2017. And right now today, we have 117 that we need from New Jersey and 68 from Pennsylvania.
In addition to the wall, the southern end of the National Mall is already home to some of the most recognizable monuments in the world, spanning from the Lincoln Memorial, up the massive reflecting pool to the World War II Memorial, and eventually the Washington Monument. Organizers hope the Education Center at the wall will be a starting point for visitors to the mall.
This is a project that will cost about $130 million, and we've made a great deal of progress, raising just over a third of that at $42 million, but we have a long way to go.
The legislation that approved the Education Center requires organizers to raise the entire $130 million cost of the project before they can ever start construction. So with about $90 million to go, Jim Knotts isn't exactly sure when they'll be able to start, but it should take about 2 years to complete the projects once they are able to break ground.
And I would imagine it's a difficult process to even get approval for new construction on the National Mall.
Yeah, difficult is kind of an understatement. It literally takes an act of Congress to get something approved to be added to the National Mall. That was done in 2003 for the Education Center, and since that time they've been working on the design, which is completed now, and now it's all about raising that money. Until the money is raised, you can see the Wall of Faces exhibit and other items that will be a part of the Education Center at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund website. They also have a page established for every service member that's listed on the wall, all 58,000, with some information about their individual service. That website is also where folks can go to contribute and support the effort to build the Education Center.
Very worthy cause. Thanks so much, Mark. Ken Burns' 18-hour documentary series, The Vietnam War, runs over 2 weeks on WHYY-TV. It begins September 17th at 8 p.m.
Coming up on First, this artist always knew he was meant to be an artist, and he will be joining the Brandywine Arts Festival next weekend. And later, some Wilmington kids reflect on their time learning from police. It's more than a bonding exercise.
The kind of approach that I think makes sense is to take as a model the Federal Employee Health Benefit Plan, large purchasing pool, replicate that with a national purchasing pool called the National Exchange, very much like what we use, bring down very low administrative costs, private sector plans that compete against one another, good choices, decent prices, and if you have a part of the country where you only have one option, have a fallback public options.
That interview was recorded almost 8 years to the day on the first edition of First. Senator Tom Carper is back here again. Welcome, Senator.
God, I look great.
You did, you did. Okay, so first question, when it comes to health care, why can't that
I ran
option...
5 miles this morning, too.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
So
I work out every day.
Well, that's good.
Haven't missed a day's work from sickness for 40 years.
Well, I can say that I have.
40 years.
Well, I have missed some days at the gym. So, all right, when it comes to health care, why can't that option you describe work?
Why can't it not work? Actually, what we've done instead, we set up 50 exchanges in various states. It's an old idea. It's an idea that came out of the Heritage Commission, introduced by a bunch of Republican senators in '93. And instead of having a national plan, what we could pass was one that said, let's make it possible for people in every state who can't get health care coverage through Medicaid, Medicare, or through their employer, then make sure that they have the opportunity to participate in a large group plan. And that's what we've done. And the Trump administration has been trying to destabilize that. They've driven up premium costs by quite a bit. And now we have the opportunity to kind of hit the pause button, stabilize the exchanges, get more insurers competing in the exchanges, more competition will bring down prices. And I think we're at actually a very encouraging point as we take this up coming back into session after the Labor Day recess.
Let's go back to a few weeks ago. You created a national sensation by simply stating Republicans and Democrats should actually work together to come up with the plan. How can something so simple be such a big deal?
Well, healthcare is not simple. It's pretty complicated. We've gotten very much factionalized, fractured as a nation, as you know, and the president that we have today is not a unifying force. As it turns out, though, in the Senate, we Democrats and Republicans, we like each other.
Okay.
We generally get along, and the days right after the week, 2 weeks after Labor Day, we're going to be having 6 bipartisan hearings. 6 bipartisan hearings, Democrats and Republicans sitting down. Governors will be coming from all over the country to tell us this is what we think you should do. Insurance commissioners from all over the country, health insurance companies, health economists, and out of that will come, I think, a path to stabilize the exchanges in all 50 states, bring down the premiums by probably as much as 30%, and bring in more insurance companies to compete in the state exchanges.
Is healthcare tied to tax reform?
No, not really, not in my mind. We need to do both. We have very high corporate tax rates, and compared to the rest of the world, we need to bring those down, and we need to do that in a way that is fair. We need to do that in a way that stimulates economic growth. We need to do that in a way that simplifies the tax code, doesn't make it more complex, and we need to do it in a way that doesn't make the budget deficit skyrocket.
Okay. Well, in the video that we saw earlier that was recorded 8 years ago, the rest of that soundbite was from Mike Castle. He suggested that Congress should be...
I can't tell you how many times people have called me Mike Castle.
Well,
I mean, in my life,
we'll never
hundreds
call
of
you
times.
Mike Castle, but
no, I've been called a lot worse.
Well, look, I'm sure.
And he's been called Tom Carper a million times as
Okay, well, that's good to know. Well, he suggested
even
that Congress...
Even our wife get us confused. So.
Okay.
No,
Well, yeah, she shouldn't get you guys confused. Okay, so he suggested that Congress should be looking at tort reform, a legal term, as a way to lower health care costs. You don't hear anything like that from Republicans today. Any reason why?
Well, one of the reasons why, actually, there's a language in the Affordable Care Act that I authored, and it called for let's try a lot of different approaches to reduce the practice of defensive medicine. For many years, doctors, hospitals, nurses prescribed more tests, more medicine, more MRIs, more X-ray, more everything, longer stays in hospitals, because if they got sued, then they would be able to say, well, we did everything we could think of. I put in legislation that says let's try a lot of different experiments, and one of those is going on at Christiana Care, and it's actually worked. And let's say you're my doctor at Christiana Care, you perform a procedure on me, you mess it up, I know it, you know it, the other folks at the hospital know it, and instead of like hiding that, putting up attorneys and keep blocking anything from happening, you apologize. We meet, you apologize. You say, I feel badly about this. I want to apologize. I want to make you whole financially. If you lost a lot of time from work, pain and suffering, you're just inconvenience, we'll make you whole. I don't have to accept your offer, but we do that meeting. We have that meeting without attorneys. But if I don't accept that offer, nothing that you say to me can be used against you in a court of law. What has happened at Christiana Care? The incidence of defensive medicine, unnecessary testing, long stays in hospitals and so forth is down. Patient satisfaction is up. Employee satisfaction is up. Outcomes are better. How about that? And we did it in part is, I think, a run on the follow-up to the legislation that's in the Affordable Care Act. Is defensive medicine still a concern? Yes, it is. Is there a way to deal with it? Yes, and one of the great models in the country is right here in Delaware.
Okay. Well, I want to give you some time to plug in something that's coming up, a Veterans Job Fair. Let's hear about that.
Yeah, I was a veteran, 3 tours of Southeast Asia. When I came back to this country, I moved from California to Delaware and got an MBA, and then I had to find a job, wanted to find a job. And it wasn't that hard, but when a lot of veterans came back to this country from their service at the bottom of the Great Recession 8 years ago, our unemployment rate was 10%. Unemployment rate for veterans was more than 10%. And Chris Coons suggested about 6 years ago that we have a job fair.
Okay, and that's coming up in Middletown.
Well, actually, we had our first one about 6 years ago. We had the Chase Center. There are 2,000 people there looking for jobs. 2,000. And
10 seconds. Middletown, when?
I think it's September 15th. It's a Friday, 10 to 2 at the fire company.
Okay. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Senator. Senator Tom Carper, thanks again for being
you.
our first person. You can check out this interview in its entirety at newsworks.org/Delaware.
Next weekend kicks off the Brandywine Arts Festival. It continues to draw artisans from around the region, including the subject of our first experience this week. For over 2 decades, artist Rick Phillips worked as an illustrator. He did work for clients such as Campbell Soup and GlaxoSmithKline. But Rick wasn't happy sitting in front of a computer, so he decided to start painting. Rick is happy now, spending most of his time painting or teaching others to paint.
I've been an artist since I was 15. All my life I've wanted to be an artist, and I've always made a living as an artist. I knew to make a living as an artist I was going to go into advertising. Not as much fun as fine art. I was always trying to figure out what the client wanted. The no-brainer stuff was kind of fun. Here, draw this waffle or this bowl of soup. I got tired of sitting behind a computer. I want to go paint a fountain or a statue somewhere. Little did I know I was going to become obsessed with it, and that's where my heart lies. Somebody said it's like baseball. Every time you come to the plate, you don't hit a home run. But sometimes you do. And that feels good. And the recognition feels good too. Sometimes I wished I had done the fine art earlier, but maybe it wasn't time. Maybe I wouldn't have been ready yet. Now I paint almost every day. Even if you're not painting, you're thinking about what you're going to be painting or what problems you might be having with the painting. I grew up in the country, so those are the things that speak to me. And I guess it is the serenity or the solitude. I've always been sort of shy and maybe a loner, so you kind of drew within yourself. So now I'm doing things that are sort of lonely or sort of that same sort of thing. That's where I feel comfortable. I love the serenity. It is kind of like a religious experience for me. I feel like I'm so happy. I couldn't be more relaxed or feel any luckier. I think just making a living as an artist is satisfying. I just hope I can keep on doing it. My best friend in college, who also is an artist, we've talked about this. He summed it up pretty good by saying, if there is reincarnation, I want to come back as an artist. I don't think I would change much. I think I would just do the same things. Just go paint, and I'm very happy.
You can see Rick's work at the pop-up art gallery in the Powder Mill Square Shopping Center in Greenville. Rick is also the featured artist at the 2017 Brandywine Festival of the Arts on September 9th and 10th. Learn more about the festival at brandywinearts.com. You can get more information on Rick at rickphillipsartist.com.
Recently, Thrillist, an online lifestyle site, ranked Wilmington as one of America's best small cities to move to before they get too popular. Despite the accolade, though, violence continues to plague pockets of the city. Mike Ganade is here with me. He's with Westminster Presbyterian Church in Wilmington. Mike, so glad to have you here.
Great, thanks to be here.
Next week, your church is going to be hosting a symposium that you're calling Taking on Violence in Wilmington. Tell me about the symposium and what prompted the church to host it.
We were fortunate enough to have Father Greg Boyle attending this, who's nationally known as an author and Jesuit priest who's been supportive of changing violence in Los Angeles through gang members and other capabilities. And through a challenge performed by our church a couple years ago after the city was unfortunately mentioned in Newsweek about being Murder Town, USA. A number of our church parishioners kind of posed a challenge to us to get involved. And we since then read one of Father Boyle's books, Tattoos on the Heart. We got in touch with his organization and found out that he would be able to come and speak and inspire, hopefully others, not only nonprofits, but also the city and city councils to work together to improve and reduce violence in Wilmington.
Now, he'll be the keynote speaker, but how is Westminster out in the community? I mean, do you have outreach efforts going on?
We have many outreach efforts, not only in the community, but also globally. I'm one of the conveners of our Urban Mission program, and we have around 30 outreach programs that we provide locally.
What are you seeing firsthand?
Firsthand, I guess we're just seeing that there's a lot of help and needs out there by organizations. We support the homeless, we support hunger and youth programs, and we also support some worldwide global initiatives to help individuals in need. But I guess what we're seeing is just the need to support the youth primarily, because we feel if we can approach them and give them the tools and skills to improve their lives, then we feel that can, benefit not only in the reduction of violence, but also the community of Wilmington.
I think what we are seeing, though, in the community is there are a lot of efforts to address, the poverty, the unemployment within Wilmington, and yet we are still seeing incidents of violence, and the problem persists. Why are those efforts maybe not yielding the results that they are hoping to, in your opinion?
Well, I think one of the things that we've learned as a committee is that we've gone out to a number of nonprofit organizations and really tried to understand specifically the programs and services they have, and then what needs they may have. And we found out that there was just a lot of barriers and pillars between the organizations, not knowing what one another are capable of doing. And I feel like that may be anonymous with what the city has done in the past too, is that they know of organizations, but they don't know all the services that are provided, and there wasn't a strategy, I guess, to incorporate a lot of these different services the way Father Boyle has been successful in his 25 years in running his homeboy operation.
Do you hope that this symposium will sort of connect the dots for everyone?
We hope so. I mean, our intention was to, one, get involved, to have an inspirational speaker so there would be more dialogue. So we're hoping that with the advent of 30 plus nonprofits that will be exhibiting at this symposium next week, we're hoping that there's going to be a lot of dialogue and interaction between the two, or between the organizations themselves, so then maybe some plans and programs can come out of that.
And that's how you see everything playing out down the road to address the violence, larger scale.
Absolutely. And we're fortunate, I think, to see locally kind of an alignment happening. We have, a new mayor. We have the advisory council within the city. We have the CDC report that has come out and has identified a number of issues in addressing the violence and poverty and issues that are occurring in the city. So we feel that that in itself can bring about change now. The
event is titled Taking on Violence in Wilmington. It takes place Saturday, September 9th from 1 to 4 p.m. at Westminster Presbyterian Church. The address, 1502 West 13th Street. To register this event, log on to WPC.org. Mike Ganade, thank you so much for being here from Westminster Presbyterian Church. Good luck at the event. Thanks so much for being here on First.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Some area students are heading back to school with a new attitude this semester, and the Wilmington Police Youth Academy has everything to do with that change. A few participants expected it to be like ordinary camp. Others took it as a networking opportunity, but the experience altered their perspective about the men and women behind the badge. Who's going to escort her back in? For these students, the Wilmington Police Youth Academy was the perfect place to be this summer.
Think about it. If he keeps using I, but he keeps saying I was with a friend, that's what I want you to target. Go ahead.
It was a camp of contrasts. There were two sets of young people involved. First, a group with no interest in law enforcement. The other, a group of teenagers with life already figured out.
You had a gun, but it was just fake.
I want to be a lawyer, prosecutor.
I'm very interested in detective work and maybe even want to go into the FBI.
And detective work was exactly what 12-year-old Zion Webb experienced.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 patrol. The rest of you guys are detectives over there.
In the field, police officers wanted to give the kids real-world experiences.
I just want to be as detailed as possible so they can know how much of detail we have to pay attention to.
They handed over some of their police work, and they didn't go easy on the students either.
So we've surveyed our crime scene. Now what normally happens is when patrol respond out to a scene, if there are evidence, the patrol officer cordons off the crime scene. Pay attention. And the reason he's cordoning off the crime scene is for you guys to come to investigate.
A lot of people in my family are from the military, they are in the military. So they do a lot of stuff and they tell me stories about it, and it sounds really interesting.
On the flip side, students like Leah Hearns doesn't see a career in law enforcement for herself, but she walked away with a different experience.
On social media, there's a lot going around about them being bad, but they're like superheroes. Honestly, the world would not be the same without police officers. They keep everything sane and calm.
In the classroom, Master Sergeant William Smid was one of those heroes with one goal in mind: to encourage students to stay on the right path.
The national average of life expectancy for gang members is 18 to 24 years of age. So for most kids, I mean, that's the end of your childhood. When you turn 18, you're an adult. And to have just a mere 5, 6 years left to even look at that, I mean, some of these kids in the room were 12 years old. If this average is correct and they were lured in that lifestyle, their lives are halfway over already.
But life is just beginning for the 14 participants of this year's academy. Although each student walked away with a certificate during a graduation ceremony, the academy changed many of their lives, and their heartfelt speeches were proof of that.
I used to believe that there weren't many good cops left because most of them had turned to taking the lives of the innocent. But during these 2 weeks, I learned that isn't the case at all. It's hard to be an officer, and these officers make that clear. They wake up every morning with one goal in mind: save a life. They keep this goal in mind, all while in the back of their head they know that each morning they go out on the job could be their last. I now know that a police officer is no different than you and I, but they're human like me. Thank you.
Many students are looking forward to the Wilmington Police Youth Academy next summer. Organizers say 14 students were recruited to participate. Surprisingly, many were young ladies this year, and they hope to draw an even bigger interest from boys and girls in 2018. One fun fact from this year's participants: they enjoyed the police work, but not the morning exercise to get them fit for the day.
Well, maybe they'll grow to love it.
Can't blame them.
Yeah. So next week on First, Vietnam veterans are giving their oral histories of their time on the battlefront to a Delaware documentarian.
It's all part of our countdown to the Ken Burns PBS Vietnam series. That is First for this week. We thank you for watching. For Nichelle Polston and Shirley Min, I'm Mark Eichman. Have a great week.